Welcome to Right or Wrong, Biblical, Ethical, and Moral Considerations by B. Cooper, Colorado Christian University. I've provided a table of contents for you to easily maneuver through each of the slides. The Lord said, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is the good and acceptable and perfect." This scripture, in my interpretation, relates to we will be tested in the right or wrong actions. We won't be conformed by wrong actions of this world, but we will be transformed by God renewing our mind so that we may be good and acceptable in His presence. Ethical and moral behaviors play a very significant role in our lives as human beings, as well as affect the lives of others. It is our abilities to conduct the right and wrong behavior in daily life. Our ethical systems are based on our actions, our principles, our character, and our intentions of doing right and wrong towards others. Therefore, as in Matthew 7:12, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In my interpretation of this statement, if you are kind, loving, and caring towards others, they will be loving, kind, and caring towards you. However, in modern day, that doesn't necessarily mean if you're kind, caring, and loving, they will return to you the same way. The punishment inflicted on him by the majority is sufficient. Now instead, you ought to forgive him so that he will not be overwhelmed by excessive sorrow. 2 Corinthians 6:8. My interpretation of this statement simply means wrongdoers will be inflicted with punishment not only by the earthly law, but by God Himself as well. We as human beings should forgive each other of trespasses against us, as in scriptures. God has also forgiven wrongdoers and has given them a chance to redeem themselves. Theoretical beliefs are handed down from quite a different array of people in the apostleship and discipleship and intellectual minds that God has created. The Apostle Paul described the reality of situation through intellectual writings. Those on this screen, such as Plato, Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas, John Locke, Stuart Mill, and Immanuel Kant, also have incorporated intellectual writings that we can learn from. Corinthians 2:11-12 says, "For who knows a person's thoughts except for the spirit of that person which is in him? So also no one comprehends the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we might understand things freely given to us by God." In understanding how the process of thinking works, we need to seek our past intellectual thinkers. We need to seek guidance from the Bible of the Old Testament and New. Plato explained his theory on absolutism as a personal characteristic towards what kind of life people should lead. Aristotle also had his theory of what a person should be like. St. Thomas Aquinas stated that personal character is of the soul with virtue and rational principles. Immanuel Kant suggested maximums with rationality and reasoning are how a person's actions are related to nature and what he should do from a categorical national aspect. John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism relays the message that benefits over harm are related to the greatest number of affected people. In John Locke's theories of natural law and natural rights of human beings, he suggests that they are subject to moral law. Because of these great thinkers, our actions and moral conduct are guided with an additional resource that has been provided to us from God. In discerning what type of decisions are made under moral conduct, a set of strategies that need to be under review are: what kind of person should I be? What kind of life should I lead? What are my duties of moral action? What are my obligations regarding the consequences of those duties? Do my actions of moral standards bring value or conscience? Are my happiness desires derived from those obligatory duties? And does my morality of right or wrong vary from other people's ethical truth? When we speak of virtuous theory, duteous theory, and consequentialist theory, we must understand that habits could be good and they could be bad. Therefore, it is essential that we seek guidance through the cardinal virtues and the scripture. The cardinal virtues describe wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice that provides building blocks of foundation that is an ongoing developmental process to maintaining or enhancing upon our good ethics and good moral behaviors. Aristotle once stated that the good habits are related to emotion. The emotion of fear when a person is facing death. An example would be, how do I know if I've made the right or wrong decision? And what should I do? In the prison system, innocent criminals serving life sentences are facing unknown danger on a daily basis. They are enduring pain and suffering, as are their family members. The moral obligations and duties are now left up to someone else to determine for them. In the case study on June 26, 1971, State versus Phillips, a breaking and entering was planned by 4 men, one of which was the victim's brother-in-law. Mr. Phillips has been incarcerated for 41 years and recently been released. 2010 trial, his attorneys asked for him to be terminated from more jail time as he had served his sentence. However, that is not the fact. The fact is, the case is ongoing, and he may or may not go back to prison for the rest of his life. When a person recognizes their moral potentials, they can discern whether they're completing the right or wrong actions in life. When they're in tune with their self-realization, they can determine the facts of other people's values as well as their own don't have to be incorporated together. By maximizing on their desires stemming from pure heart, good conscience, and sincere faith, they can avoid the wrongful actions and consequences. By using logical and deliberate reasoning that is morally just in any action, promotes ethical judgments. The reasoning in our case study shows quite a few inconsistencies, documentation, errors, procedure, and lack for real moral reasoning behind the principles of the law. Deuteronomy 19:15 specifically states, "One witness is not enough to convict anyone accused of any crime or offense they may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 to 3 witnesses." Mitchell's testimony was not disclosed at the hearing for Mr. Phillips, that he had made a plea bargain with the prosecutor that if he stated Mr. Phillips was there, his sentence would be lessened. Mr. Palamo's testimony proved that he did not know Mr. Phillips. The physical evidence was consistent with Mr. Palamo's testimony against Mitchell. However, the issue of Mr. Pooch, who is an unknown suspect, is at hand. It wasn't until 2010, at the actual trial, when a break in the case came from Mr. Palamo testifying that Mr. Williams wasn't a murderer. He didn't commit the crime. They didn't even know him. In clarifying the facts of the case and determining virtual issues and principles, identifying and ruling out, comparing the alternatives, and considering the consequences, we can conclusively make a good decision. All the evidence points to Mr. Phillips as being innocent. However, the fact of the remains that there are still 2 issues. Where was Mr. Phillips at the time of the murder? And who is Pooch? My final thoughts are outlined on this page, and I have just one more thing to add. Our good moral behavior and character not only shows in the actions that we do, but it reflects on others as well. We need to think rationally, logically, before doing anything. Not only does the purpose of our forefounders and all the intellectuals that we've encountered over our life guide us, they continue providing us with logical thought process to build on.